Sean Vincent Gillis was one of America's lesser-known serial killers, yet his crimes were among the most disturbing. Operating in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, over a decade from 1994 to 2004, Gillis quietly took the lives of 8 women, leaving behind a trail of brutality that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. Unlike many notorious serial killers who dominated headlines, Gillis stayed under the radar, his appearance and demeanor never hinting at the horrors he committed. His first known victim, Anne Bryan, was 81 years old when Gillis brutally murdered her in 1994. Anne was a lively woman, loved by her community for her charm and her love of classical music. Gillis broke into her home, stabbed her repeatedly, and left her body in the bathtub. Perhaps the most chilling detail about her murder was that Gillis returned to her home days after her death, revisiting the crime scene. Her age and vulnerability made her an easy target for his violent urges, marking the beginning of a spree that would go on for 10 years. In 1999, he struck again, this time targeting Joyce Williams, a 36-year-old mother of 3. Joyce was known in her community as a hard-working and loving woman, dedicated to her children. Gillis abducted her, dismembered her body, and scattered her remains, leaving her family devastated and the community in fear. The brutality of her murder shocked those who knew her, turning what was once a close-knit neighborhood into a place of paranoia and fear. Later that same year, Gillis murdered Catherine Hall, a 29-year-old woman who had been struggling with addiction. Catherine had been working hard to find stability, but on the day she encountered Gillis, her life took a tragic turn. He strangled her, leaving her lifeless body dumped in an isolated area. Catherine, like many of his victims, was already vulnerable, a fact that Gillis exploited to satisfy his sadistic urges. Her death was a heartbreaking end to a life full of potential. In 2000, Gillis claimed the life of Marilyn Nevels, a 38-year-old woman with dreams of a better future. Marilyn had been fighting her own battles, but those who knew her remembered her as a generous, kind-hearted woman. Gillis strangled and mutilated her before discarding her remains in a field, another horrifying entry in his list of victims. The lack of motive and his cold, detached nature made Marilyn's murder all the more terrifying. Perhaps the most gruesome of all Gillis's crimes was the murder of Donna Bennett Johnston in 2004. Donna, 43 years old and a mother of 2, had fallen on hard times when she crossed paths with Gillis. She was walking alongside a highway when he abducted her. After strangling her, he mutilated her body in a way that shocked even seasoned detectives. Donna's murder was a tragic end to Gillis's spree and, tragically, his last known victim. Gillis's reign of terror came to an end in 2004 when DNA evidence and profiling led to his arrest. In interviews with police, Gillis showed no remorse, calmly detailing his methods and motivations. Investigators were struck by how methodical and calculated he was. Unlike other killers driven by passion or rage, Gillis seemed coldly detached from his actions, as if the violence he inflicted meant nothing to him. During his trial, his lack of emotion only further disturbed those in the courtroom. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, leaving behind a haunting legacy of pain and sorrow. 3 other women were confessed to be killed by Gillis. Hardy, 52, disappeared from her Pollard Estates subdivision while taking a jog in May 1999. Her body was found a few days later in a St. James Parish bayou. She was linked to Gillis by confession. Lillian Robinson, 52. A fisherman found 52-year-old Robinson's naked body in the Atchafalaya Basin along Interstate 10 between Whiskey Bay and Butte La Rose exits on February 10, 2000. She was linked to Gillis by confession. Johnny May, 45, who he said had been a friend for nearly 10 years. Gillis said that when he picked her up on the street in October 2003, she had become a steady user of crack cocaine. He couldn't restrain himself, he said. Williams' body was found October 11th by a group of people riding 4-wheelers off Pride Port Hudson Road near Green Franklin Road. She was linked to Gillis by DNA. The victims of Sean Vincent Gillis were not just numbers in a crime statistic. They were mothers, daughters, and women struggling with their own battles, each life uniquely valuable. The horrors that befell them were not simply the work of a deranged mind, but the calculated actions of a man who hid his monstrous tendencies behind an unassuming exterior. His name may not be as well known as other killers, but for the families of his victims and the community of Baton Rouge, the pain of what he did will never be forgotten.